It seems to me that when reflecting on Tibetan Buddhism, I have to say that in some respects, I've been sold a lemon. The expression sold a lemon just means that really what you got isn't what you thought you were buying. It's like you thought you were buying a nice sweet orange and it turns out to be a lemon. So what I'm saying here is not that there isn't anything of value in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. Obviously there is. I wouldn't have stuck around for 20 years if there wasn't. But the behaviour of the lamas has really shown me where the problems or where the inadequacies of the Tibetan tradition actually are. Because what we get here, what we're actually seeing are teachers, who really should be an indication of the result of this path, because they're supposed to have followed it. And what we're seeing is that they're not embodying their teachings. They are unbalanced people. They are emotionally immature, have very poor social skills, so they're very immature in terms of social development. And on the other hand, they are highly developed in terms of certain mental capacities. But that's just one aspect of a human being. It's like they've floated off somewhere with this ability to, sit in the nature of mind and see everything as it really is. Great. But if that's not integrated into your normal life so that you are a decent human being, then something's missing. Something's wrong with the whole system. So there are areas of unconsciousness, shall we say, where there's a lack of awareness. These guys are not enlightened. No way, because they've got blind spots. There's too much that they don't see. And, obviously, if they can't embody these teachings, then, there's a massive failure. I'm now starting to see where the holes are in Tibetan Buddhism. And when I look at the words of the Buddha, I'm not sure that it comes from the actual Buddha's words. For instance, the 5 skandhas are what make us up, and there's form, and there's feeling, and there's perception, and then there's the mental things. He doesn't say we should forget about the other things. He doesn't say that's wrong. It's just how it is. But it's like Tibetan Buddhism has forgotten about the other bits. They've just gone into the mind. It's like they've just gone off somewhere and not related it to the world. So getting back to the lemon. So what were we told, right? What was the glossy outside? The glossy outside was enlightenment in one lifetime. And I think what that did was make us, just willing to do anything. It's a bit like a sales pitch. And then anything that will speed up our spiritual development, we just, go for it. And that was used, to coerce women to have sex. It's the carrot on the stick. It's using this, the Western people, we want everything quickly. Enlightenment in one lifetime, yes. This will speed up my spiritual development, yes. We're also willing to do it because it's part of the trap that caught us, this hook of quick enlightenment. And I don't know about other people in how they were taught, but, there's an incredible arrogance there. And, I believe that it was the religion with all the answers and this was the way. Enlightenment, what's enlightenment? Isn't enlightenment a full realization of ourselves, as human beings, like full, balanced, whole, not one side developed and another side completely undeveloped. It's just not healthy. And this is what we're seeing with the lama's behaviour, and that's what it's shown about the whole system. That there's a lack there. And the lack is in dealing with our emotions and, dealing with issues. It's like there's this tendency to, instead of engage with the world, to go away and, sit up on your retreat and pray and think that that's enough. And when it comes to working with our emotions, it's this whole idea that particularly negative emotions are our enemies. There's no appreciation there for their role, for what they're telling us. A negative emotion is like pain in your body. It's telling you that there's something wrong. And, we're taught just to drop it, just to let it go, to pay it no attention. It's just an emotion. And, you need that. You need that idea so that you don't get really caught up in those emotions. But at the same time, you do need to express and examine whatever comes up for you. Particularly when you're sitting there watching a lama behave badly and you're feeling there's something wrong here. I mean, that sort of situation just showed us really clearly how it doesn't work. It's not healthy to just simply dismiss your emotions. They're there for a reason, and they need to be examined and worked through, and then you can let them go. So this is a problem with the actual religion, and it's basically that it doesn't deal with the emotional and mental aspects of ourselves. Not only that, but some lamas actually put that kind of work down. I was lucky in that I'd done a certain amount of work on myself before I came to Buddhism, so I had something to work with in the practices. But there was nothing in the actual tradition to help you to uncover, your issues, the stuff you actually need to work with, because how can you be, spiritually developed if you're not emotionally and, mentally at a good space? And when you add this sense of squashing your ego, or crushing your ego, as certain Tibetan lamas like to refer to it as, what are you crushing? You could just be crushing one's basic sense of self here. We all need a healthy ego. Maybe it's made on the assumption that you've already got a healthy ego. There's no mention of it, no place for it. Ego is described as self-grasping, grasping at a false idea of ourselves. So ego doesn't, in Buddhism, doesn't actually refer to your basic sense of self. But because this is the word that's being used, there's confusion there. My teacher, at least, didn't make any distinction, certainly not in practice. All of this abuse was all about crushing people's egos. But all it did was crush their sense of self, which is not actually helping them. Because you can't build spiritual realization on top of emotional and mental issues and expect that you will have a well-rounded, well-integrated human being. Instead of, putting down Western therapy, I think the Tibetan lamas would be much better to employ psychotherapists in their centres, for instance, and to start people with some basic psychotherapy work, so that you make sure that before you get into all this mind stuff, that you're already, you're comfortable in your own body, you've worked through your mental and emotional shit, or do it, along with it as a kind of another thread in your study and practice. Because if you don't do that work, you're going to end up like these lamas, like unbalanced. And isn't that what we see, with the students around these lamas who protect them and cover up for them, and seem to have no compassion for the person who's feeling harmed with whatever behaviour. Again, that's an indication of an unbalanced person. They've lost their feeling. They've lost their empathy. If you're going to evaluate any system of spirituality, you look at the results. And, we're told that, there were these great masters in the past and they were enlightened and all this sort of thing. But we don't know how they were. Look at Sogyal Rinpoche. He's a sadistic bastard. And yet they hold him up as being, an example of an enlightened being. So, I can't trust anything that they say. I can't trust that what they hold up as valuable is actually as valuable as they'd like to have us think. And as I say, it's the behaviour of the lamas that make you see this really clearly. You can see the lacks. So what does that mean for Tibetan Buddhism? I just think it means that for anybody going into it, they need to also probably do some psychotherapy. They need to really have a strong sense of self. And I think the sense of, selling is important because, we were sold something and they're still selling something, and, it's a business. And the lamas are, the heads of a business enterprise. They're making a lot of money and they've got a lot to protect. And I think we just need to be really clear that this is what it is. At least with their superstar lamas, with their huge sanghas and their huge organisations, lots of money going. And you might be better off with some little lama who's not interested in creating an empire. So I think there's much more to be examined in terms of, where Tibetan Buddhism isn't actually as great as we thought it was. It's not the complete spiritual path that we were taught it was, because it leaves out a lot of who we are as people, and because it produces unbalanced individuals who only completely naive people would look at and think that they're enlightened. And unfortunately, there are still people who look at Sogyal Rinpoche and think that he's a genuine crazy wisdom master. Yep. So the point I'm trying to make here is just that Tibetan Buddhism is not all it's cracked up to be, and it certainly didn't live up to my expectations. I feel I was sold a lemon, and that's not to say that there isn't a great deal that I got out of it. The whole thing is not bad in the terms of the aspect of human experience that it does work with. It's brilliant. I think we just have to realise that it's only one strand. It doesn't deal with the whole person. So don't expect Tibetan Buddhism to give you a complete path. It's not a complete path. It's a path of examination of your mind at a very subtle level. And if the compassion teachings were really as important as we were led to believe, then you would see more compassion in these lamas. So though the compassion teachings are there, for some reason or other, compassion is not the result. And I'm talking about my experience with Sogyal Rinpoche. That's not to say that it's different in other lamas. I mean, His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, just oozes compassion. So there you are. That's it for today. Thanks for listening. I hope you found it helpful.